The sound of a champagne flute shattering on the red carpet drowned out the wedding march. Everyone thought I was just overcome with emotion. Only I knew that face had been etched into my very being for 5 years. My best friend pushed me onto the stage to give a speech. I smiled through the blessings, only to be yanked into his arms. He leaned down and whispered in my ear, "You've lost weight." During the toasts, he slipped a note into my hand. "She forced me to break up with you. Meet me on the rooftop tonight." I looked up, meeting Serena's meaningful smile. The note in my palm was drenched in cold sweat. Tonight's wedding, who was the real bride? The sound of a champagne flute shattering on the red carpet drowned out the wedding march. Everyone thought I was just overcome with emotion. Only I knew that face had been etched into my very being for 5 years. My hands trembled, and shattered glass scattered at my feet. A server quickly came to clean it up. My best friend, Serena, rushed over, holding up the hem of her wedding dress, a bride's sweet smile on her face. "Autumn, what's wrong?" I forced a smile. "Nothing, just slipped." She linked her arm through mine, her grip so tight my wrist ached. "Good. I thought you were too excited seeing the groom." Her words were a sharp jab right behind my eyes. I looked up, meeting her curved, smiling eyes. Serena was my best friend of 10 years. From high school to college, we were inseparable, shared everything, secrets, clothes, even a dorm room. When I had my heartbreak 5 years ago, she stayed up with me until 3 a.m. every night for 3 months. But her expression now sent a chill down my spine. The groom stood still, impeccably dressed, his gaze fixed directly on me. That look was all too familiar. 5 years ago, whenever he waited for me outside school after classes, that was the look he had. Liam. I silently repeated the name in my heart, my tongue feeling as if it had been burned. "Autumn, why don't you come up and say a few words?" Serena pushed me forward. "You're my best friend." She guided me to the microphone. Dozens of tables of guests watched me. Liam stood to my left, close enough for me to catch the faint scent of pine from him. "I wish you both." My throat tightened, my voice wavering. "I wish you a lifetime of happiness, and may your hearts always be one." A round of applause filled the room. Serena smiled contentedly, linking her arm through Liam's and resting her head on his shoulder. I turned to step off the stage, but a hand suddenly pulled me back. Liam pulled me into his arms, emotions so forceful it was almost like he was snatching me. He lowered his head, his lips almost touching my ear, and whispered in a voice only we could hear, "You've lost weight." I froze. His embrace was still as wide and strong as I remembered, his chest still as solid. But this hug should have belonged to his bride. Serena stood right beside us, her smile unwavering, as if this were all a prearranged part of the ceremony. "The groom is just too enthusiastic," the MC quickly smoothed over, chuckling. "It seems the bride's bridesmaid is simply too stunning. Even the groom couldn't resist a hug." The guests burst into laughter. I pulled free from his embrace, practically fleeing off the stage. I grabbed a glass of champagne and gulped it down. The icy liquid burned a path down my throat, but the fury in my chest only intensified. During the toasts, I hid in a corner, hoping to slip away unnoticed. "Autumn." Liam was suddenly behind me, holding 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to me, his eyes holding something I couldn't decipher. I took the glass, my fingers brushing his, and recoiled as if I'd been shocked. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered. "Your invitation had my name on it." I retorted, a cold laugh escaping me. "What, afraid I'd cause a scene?" He didn't speak, just quickly slipped a piece of paper into my palm. His movement was so swift that none of the surrounding guests noticed. 10 p.m. tonight, rooftop. I looked down at the words on the note, my palm instantly drenched in cold sweat. When I looked up, Serena stood not far away, holding a glass of red wine, and gave me a meaningful smile. That smile was too perfect, so perfect it sent shivers down my spine. I crumpled the note, my nails digging into my flesh. This wedding, from the moment the champagne glass shattered, was destined to be anything but a normal celebration. I clutched the note, feeling like I was holding a ticking time bomb. Serena walked over, red wine in hand, her heels clicking on the marble floor, each sound like a drumbeat in my chest. "Autumn, you don't look so good." She smiled gently, reaching out to touch my face. I instinctively took half a step back. Her hand froze in midair, her smile faltering for a second before returning to normal. "Are you drinking too much? Should I have someone bring you some water?" "No, thanks." I tucked the note into my clutch, forcing a smile. "I'm just going to the restroom." Serena nodded, but her eyes lingered on my face for a few seconds. That gaze was too sharp, as if trying to dissect me. I quickly turned and walked to the restroom, pushed open a stall door, and leaned against the wall, taking deep, gasping breaths. 5 years ago, Liam disappeared without a word. I called him hundreds of times, sent countless messages, all of them vanishing without a trace. Finally, I received a single text. Don't look for me. We're not right for each other. Those 8 words sentenced my 5 years of love to death. I cried for a whole month, losing 10 pounds. Later, I heard he went abroad, and I forced myself to let go, to start a new life. But now, he was back as my best friend's groom. I unfolded the note. The handwriting was definitely his. I knew his script intimately. He'd written me countless love letters in college, every curve and line burned into my memory. She forced me to break up with you. Meet me on the rooftop tonight. That sentence was like a knife, plunging directly into the softest part of my heart. She forced him to break up? Serena? I crumpled the note, an unspeakable mix of anger and hurt churning in my chest. A knock suddenly sounded. Autumn, are you in there? Serena's voice came from outside the door. I quickly tore the note into tiny pieces and flushed them down the toilet. Yes, I took a deep breath and opened the stall door. Serena stood in front of the sink, touching up her lipstick in the mirror. She wore a custom-made wedding dress, her makeup perfect. She looked every bit the happiest bride. I walked over to wash my hands, catching her reflection watching me. Autumn, I'm so happy you're here as my bridesmaid. She finished her lipstick, then turned and took my hand. I know it hasn't been easy for you these past few years, being on your own. Liam and I will take good care of you from now on. Take care of me? I couldn't help but laugh. Of course, we're best friends, aren't we? She blinked, her expression impeccably sincere. I looked into her eyes. Those eyes were so familiar. We'd been crazy together, laughed and cried together. I even thought she was the person who understood me best in this life. But at this moment, her face suddenly felt alien. Serena, are you happy? I asked. She paused, then smiled brightly. Of course I'm happy. Liam is wonderful to me. That's good. I pulled my hand from hers. Congratulations. With that, I turned and walked out of the restroom. Her voice drifted after me. Autumn, you'll be on stage to give a speech later. I've already arranged it all. My steps faltered. A speech. She wanted me to give a speech at Liam's wedding. When I returned to the banquet hall, the MC was warming up the crowd. Liam stood on stage, impeccably dressed, a polite smile on his face. I couldn't make out his expression, only saw him glance in my direction. Next, let's invite the bride's best friend and bridesmaid, Autumn, to the stage to offer her blessings to the happy couple. Applause erupted. All eyes were on me. I took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The microphone was handed to me, my palms slick with sweat. Hello everyone, I'm Autumn, Serena's best friend. I heard my voice tremble. Serena and I have known each other for 10 years. She's the most important friend in my life. Serena waved to me from below, her smile radiant. Seeing her find her happiness today truly makes me happy. I paused, my gaze involuntarily falling on Liam. The groom is wonderful, and they are a perfect match. Liam watched me, expressionless. I wish you a lifetime of happiness, and may your hearts always be one. I raised my glass. Cheers. The guests below raised their glasses. I tilted my head back and gulped the wine, tears almost spilling from my eyes. The MC took the microphone, asking the bride and groom to embrace. Liam hugged Serena, then released her, and walked towards me. Thank you, bridesmaid. He reached out and gave me a ceremonial hug. Just as he leaned close to my ear, I heard a low, husky voice. You've lost weight. I froze. That tone was too familiar, laced with tenderness, guilt, and something else I couldn't quite place. I abruptly pushed him away, stumbling back 2 steps. The guests below chuckled, thinking the groom's humor had amused me. But I saw a glint of tears in Liam's eyes. Serena walked over and linked her arm through his, smiling at me. Autumn, are you okay? Ai fine. I set down the glass, almost running away. Reaching a corner, I pulled out my phone. A new message on the screen, from an unknown number. 10 o'clock, rooftop. I'll tell you all the truth. I stared at the words, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst. This wedding, from the moment the champagne glass shattered, was destined to be anything but a normal celebration. This was a trap. The toasts began. Serena walked table to table with Liam, smiling radiantly, showing no hint of a flaw. I stood in a corner, clutching my glass, my fingers white against the stem. That text message still lay in my phone, every word like a burning brand, scorching my palm. Autumn. Serena's voice suddenly chimed. She pulled Liam over to me, her face alight with a sweet smile. Why are you hiding here? I've been looking for you. She offered me a glass of red wine. I took it, realizing my hand was trembling when my fingertips touched the glass. A toast to you. Serena raised her glass, her eyes bright and clear. Today is the happiest day of my life. Thank you for being my bridesmaid. She finished speaking and drank it all in one gulp. I watched her throat move, the wine sliding down my stomach like a knife. Drink. Liam's voice was low. I couldn't discern his emotion. I raised my glass and took a sip. The wine was bitter, so bitter my eyes stung. Serena smiled again, reaching out to pat my shoulder. You don't look well, are you feeling sick? Do you want to go rest? I'm fine. I forced a smile. I'm just going to the restroom. The moment I turned, my wrist was grabbed. It was Liam. His grip was tight. I couldn't break free. Liam? Serena's voice came from behind, laced with a hint of displeasure. I need to speak with the bridesmaid. Liam didn't turn back, just looked at me, his gaze intense. About some wedding details, I wanted to ask her. Then hurry up. Serena's tone was a bit cold, but I didn't have the presence of mind to analyze it. Liam led me to a corner. The noisy chatter of guests surrounded us. No one noticed us. He released my hand and pulled a piece of paper from his suit pocket, quickly slipping it into my palm. Read it and burn it. His voice was hushed, so low only I could hear. 10 o'clock tonight, rooftop. Then he turned, walked back to Serena, and his smile returned to his face. I clutched the note, my palm drenched in sweat. I went to the restroom, closed the stall door, and opened the note. The handwriting was messy, but it was his familiar script. The love letters he wrote me 5 years ago, every single one had this handwriting. She forced me to break up with you. Meet me on the rooftop tonight. I'll tell you all the truth. I stared at the words, my head buzzing. She forced me to break up. 5 words, like 5 knives, one by one plunging into my heart. That night 5 years ago, he sent the breakup text, then vanished without a trace. I called hundreds of times, sent thousands of messages, all of them vanishing without a trace. I thought he was dead, thought something had happened to him, thought he had been kidnapped. Only Serena stayed by my side, hugging me, crying with me, saying, Autumn, he must have his reasons. How genuinely she cried back then. I thought she was the best friend in the world. The note was crumpled in my hand. I shoved it into my bag and pushed open the door. At the sink, Serena was touching up her lipstick. She saw me come out and smiled faintly. Still don't look well. Should I have someone take you to the hospital? No, thanks. I washed my hands and looked up into the mirror. In the mirror, Serena and I met each other's gaze. Her eyes were calm, as still as a ripple-less lake. But I always felt there was something hidden beneath that calm. Autumn, she suddenly spoke, her voice very soft. Do you hate me? I froze. Hate you for what? I asked. She smiled, finishing the last stroke of her lipstick and putting the tube back in her bag. Nothing, just asking. She turned, her heels clicking crisply on the tile floor. At the doorway, she paused, looking back at me. Oh, by the way, the fireworks show starts at 10 tonight, up on the rooftop. You might want to check it out. With that, she pushed the door open and left. I stood alone in the restroom, the note in my hand drenched in cold sweat. 10 o'clock, rooftop, fireworks show. She had calculated everything. I pulled out my phone and looked again at the message from the unknown number.
10 o'clock, rooftop.
I'll tell you all the truth. Was it from Liam or from her? I didn't know, but I knew, no matter who was waiting for me on the rooftop tonight, I had to go. I looked down at my phone. 9:32 p.m. 28 minutes left. You're not eating, Autumn. The voice belonged to Uncle David, one of Serena's relatives who had known me since I was 18. He offered a kind, slightly tipsy smile. You look like you've seen a ghost. Still working too hard at the firm? Just a little tired, I said, forcing my lips to curve upward. It's been a busy season. Well, make sure you enjoy yourself tonight. Serena's been talking about this day for years. She always said she couldn't imagine getting married without you by her side. He patted my shoulder and drifted back toward the bar. For years. The words echoed in my mind. 5 years ago, when Liam disappeared, Serena had been the first one at my apartment. She had held me while I shook, cleaned up the takeout boxes piling on my counter, and whispered that men like Liam weren't worth the tears. She had stayed with me through the worst of it. Yet, 3 years later, when she casually mentioned she was dating someone new, she had kept his identity a secret. He's very private, Autumn. I'll introduce you when the time is right. The right time had turned out to be the arrival of a wedding invitation in my mailbox 3 weeks ago, with Liam's name printed in gold foil next to hers. My fingers tightened around my clutch. Inside, hidden in the inner pocket, was the crumpled note. She forced me to break up with you.
How?
How could anyone force a grown man to vanish, to abandon the person he claimed to love more than life itself? Liam was never weak. He was stubborn, fiercely independent. The piece of paper in my purse felt like a trap, but it was a trap I was going to walk into. I needed to know what had happened 5 years ago. I needed to look into his eyes and see if the man I loved was truly dead, or if he had simply been hiding. As the clock ticked closer to 10:15, the MC took the stage once more. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a spectacular treat for you tonight." His voice boomed through the speakers. At exactly 10 o'clock, the hotel will host a private fireworks display on the rooftop terrace to celebrate the union of Serena and Liam. Please begin making your way toward the elevators. A collective murmur of excitement rippled through the guests. Chairs scraped against the floor as people began to stand. I saw Serena whisper something to her mother, then turn her head. She caught my eye from across the room. She didn't wave this time. She simply lifted her wine glass in a silent, mocking toast, her red lips curving into that sharp, knowing smile. She knew. She knew about the rooftop. She knew about Liam's note. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. She was letting this happen. Or worse, she had orchestrated it. I slipped away from the crowd, moving toward the service exit near the back of the hall. The air in the service corridor was cooler, smelling of concrete and industrial floor cleaner. I bypassed the elevators, knowing they would be crowded with guests, and found the heavy steel door marked stairs. My heels clicked sharply against the concrete steps as I began my ascent. With every flight I climbed, the noise of the wedding faded, replaced by the heavy, rhythmic thrumming of my own pulse. The door to the rooftop was heavy, its metal handle cold under my palm. I pushed it open, stepping out into the cool night air. The hotel was 30 stories high, and the wind-up here was fierce, whipping my hair across my face and tugging at the hem of my bridesmaid dress. The city of Riverview stretched out below us, a sprawling grid of orange and white lights, beautiful and indifferent. The rooftop was split into 2 levels. The lower level featured a polished wooden deck with lounge chairs and a bar, currently empty. The upper level, accessed by a short flight of metal stairs, housed the maintenance equipment, the ventilation units, and a railed-off viewing platform that hung slightly over the edge of the building. I walked onto the wooden deck, my eyes scanning the shadows. Autumn. The voice came from the upper platform. I turned and saw Liam. He had taken off his tuxedo jacket, wearing only his white shirt and vest, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. The wind ruffled his dark hair, and in the dim light of the city, he looked thinner than he had on stage. The sharp lines of his jawline were more pronounced, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion that ran deep. I climbed the steps to the platform, stopping 5 feet away from him. I didn't move any closer. "You came," he said, his voice barely carrying over the wind. "Did you really think I wouldn't?" I asked, my voice steady despite the trembling in my knees. "After 5 years of silence, you show up at my best friend's wedding, drag me into your arms, and hand me a note claiming you were forced to leave. What do you want from me, Liam?" He took a step toward me, his hands reaching out, but I took a step back. He stopped, his arms falling slowly to his sides. A look of profound pain crossed his face. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he whispered. "I don't even deserve to speak to you. But I couldn't let this night pass without telling you the truth. If I didn't do it now, I would never have another chance." "The truth." I let out a dry, bitter laugh. "The truth is you disappeared. You sent me an 8-word text message and blocked my number. I spent months thinking you were dead. I went to the police, Liam. Do you have any idea what that felt like?" "I know," he said, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I know, Autumn. And every single day for the last 5 years, I've lived with that guilt. But I didn't have a choice. There is always a choice." "Not when your father's life is the price," Liam said quietly. The words hung in the cold air between us. I froze, the anger draining from my face, replaced by a cold, hollow confusion. What does my father have to do with this?" Liam took a deep breath, his shoulders shaking slightly. 5 years ago, your father's kidneys were failing. The doctors told you he had less than 6 months to live unless he got a transplant. You were devastated. You were working 3 jobs trying to raise money, but the wait list was years long. "I remember," I whispered. "My father had passed away 2 years ago, but those months of desperation were burned into my memory. And then, miraculously, we got a call. A donor had been found, and an anonymous donor had cleared his entire medical debt. We thought it was a charity foundation." "It wasn't a foundation," Liam said, his voice cracking. "It was Serena." I stared at him, the wind roaring in my ears. "What?" "Her father owns the Riverview Medical Group," Liam explained, his eyes fixed on mine. "They control 3 of the major hospitals in the state, including the one your father was admitted to. Serena came to me. She told me she had found a matching donor through her father's private registry. She said she could get your father moved to the top of the list and cover the entire cost of the surgery and post-operative care." He paused, a muscle twitching in his jaw. "But she had a condition." My throat felt incredibly dry. "She wanted you. She told me that if I stayed with you, she would ensure the donor went to someone else," Liam said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "She said she would make sure your father never received the treatment." I didn't believe her at first. I thought she was bluffing. But the next day, your father was suddenly transferred to a lower-tier ward, and his doctor told us there had been an administrative error with his insurance. He took another step closer, his eyes pleading. I tried to find another way, Autumn. I went to other hospitals, begged other doctors, but nobody could help us in time. Your father was dying. Serena called me again. She said, "One text message, Liam. Send her the text, leave the country, and her father lives. If you tell her the truth, I'll pull the funding, and she'll watch him die knowing you could have saved him." Tears finally spilled over his eyelashes, tracing wet paths down his cheeks. I loved you so much. I loved you enough to let you hate me, as long as it kept your father alive. I stood frozen, the world spinning around me. The anonymous donor. The sudden turn of events. Serena's comforting arms around me as I cried in the hospital waiting room, telling me that God had answered our prayers. He must have his reasons, Autumn, she had said back then, rubbing my back while my father was in surgery. At least your dad is safe. That's what matters. She hadn't been comforting me. She had been savoring her victory. Why now? I managed to choke out, the words tasting like ash. Why wait 5 years? And why marry her? Because she never let go, Liam said, a dark, bitter expression taking over his features. Even after I went to London, she kept tabs on me. She controlled my visa, my employment through her family's connections. She threatened that if I ever tried to contact you, she would release medical records showing your father's transplant bypass legal protocols, records her father falsified. She said she would ruin your family's name and put your father in prison, even on his deathbed. He looked toward the roof door, his voice growing tense. But your father passed away 2 years ago. The leverage she had over him is gone. I tried to break it off with her, but she threatened to destroy you next. She told me she would ruin your career, frame you for embezzlement at your firm. She has the resources to do it, Autumn. I was terrified of what she would do to you. So you agreed to marry her? I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of horror and disbelief. No, Liam said, his eyes burning with a sudden, desperate intensity. I agreed to the wedding to get her guard down, to get back to the country, to get close to her father's server systems. Over the last month, I've been gathering evidence of her family's illegal medical practices, the bribes, the falsified donor lists. I have enough to destroy them, Autumn. I just needed to tell you the truth before I blow everything up. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black USB drive. It's all in here. Every threat she made, every transaction. I'm going to the authorities tomorrow. But I needed you to know. I never stopped loving you. I stared at the black drive in his hand. The sheer scale of the manipulation was staggering. The girl I had called my sister, the girl who had shared my secrets, had systematically dismantled my life and bought the man I loved like a piece of property. And then, a sound broke through the howling of the wind. Clack, clack, clack. The distinct, sharp sound of high heels clicking against the metal stairs. What a beautiful story. A voice callously drifted through the darkness. Liam immediately stepped in front of me, shielding me with his body as Serena emerged from the shadows of the stairs. She was still wearing her wedding dress, but the delicate lace and silk now looked like armor. The wind caught her long veil, sending it whipping behind her like a pale shroud. She held a glass of red wine in one hand, her face completely calm, her eyes reflecting the cold city lights. Honestly, Liam, Serena said, taking a sip of her wine. I knew you were sentimental, but I didn't think you'd be this dramatic. I loved you enough to let you hate me. Do you write these lines in your spare time? Liam's jaw tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. It's over, Serena. I told her everything. I can see that, Serena murmured, her gaze sliding over Liam to land directly on me. She didn't look angry. She looked incredibly amused, like a child watching a puppet show she had already seen 3 times. Autumn, sweetie, you look pale. Did the truth hurt that much? You're a monster, I said, my voice shaking, but the fear was gone, replaced by a cold, burning rage. How could you do that? We were friends. I trusted you with everything. Serena sighed, walking slowly toward the railing, her movements fluid and elegant. She leaned against the metal bar, looking out over the city. We were friends, Autumn. And I did love you, but you always had this annoying habit of taking things for granted. She turned her head, her eyes narrowing slightly. Do you remember college? I had the money, I had the clothes, I had the family name. But whenever we went out, everyone looked at you. You were the smart one, the talented one, the one the professors adored. She took another sip of wine. And then you met Liam. He was perfect, brilliant, handsome, and utterly devoted to you. I watched you two for 2 years, and it sickened me how effortless your life seemed. You didn't have to try, and yet you had everything I wanted. So you decided to ruin my life? I demanded. No. I decided to play a game, Serena corrected me, her voice chillingly soft. When your father got sick, I saw an opportunity. I realized that everything has a price. Liam's price was his loyalty to you. And your price? Your price was your ignorance. I gave you your father's life. Autumn. I bought you 5 more years with him. You should be thanking me. You used my father's illness to blackmail the man I loved. I screamed, the wind swallowing my voice. And it worked beautifully, Serena smiled, her eyes glittering. For 5 years, Liam belonged to me. He hated me, of course, but he played his part. And you? You stayed by my side, crying on my shoulder, telling me I was the only sister you ever had. It was exquisite. You're sick, Liam spat, taking a step toward her. But it's over now. I have the files, Serena. Your father's hospital group is going down, and you're going with him. Serena didn't flinch. She simply tilted her head, her smile widening. Do you really think I didn't know you were downloading those files, Liam? Do you think I don't keep track of my own husband's digital footprints? Liam froze, his face losing its color. The USB drive you're holding, Serena said, pointing her wine glass at his hand. Go ahead, check it. Or rather, let me tell you what's on it. It's a very clever virus that, the moment you plug it into any external network, will automatically upload a series of forged documents framing Autumn for corporate espionage and money laundering. I've had those documents prepared for months, just in case you decided to be a hero. My breath caught in my throat. You're bluffing, Liam said, though his voice lacked conviction. Try me, Serena whispered. I have the logins from her firm. I have the dummy account set up in her name. All it takes is one click, and Autumn's life is over. She won't just be ruined. She'll spend the next 10 years in a federal penitentiary. She stepped away from the railing, walking slowly toward us until she was only a few feet away. The smell of her expensive perfume was suffocating. So, here's how the game ends, Serena said, her voice dropping to a smooth, businesslike tone. Liam, you're going to hand me that USB drive. You're going to walk downstairs, put your jacket back on, and we're going to enjoy the fireworks. Tomorrow, we leave for our honeymoon in Paris. And you, Autumn. She turned her eyes to me, her expression dripping with false pity. You're going to leave this wedding. You're going to pack your bags, resign from your firm, and move to another city. You will never contact Liam again. If you do, or if Liam tries to run, I press the button. It's that simple. She held out her hand, palm up, waiting for the drive. Choose, Serena said. Liam stood paralyzed, his eyes darting between me and the black drive in his hand. The weight of 5 years of torment seemed to crush his shoulders. He looked defeated, a man who had fought with everything he had, only to realize the chessboard had been rigged from the very first move. He slowly began to raise his hand, his fingers loosening around the USB drive. Liam, don't, I said. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a desperate, agonizing apology. Autumn, I can't let her ruin your life. I've already ruined 5 years of it. I can't let you go to prison. She's not going to ruin my life, I said. My voice was quiet, but it had a strange, steady strength that made both of them freeze. I looked at Serena. Really looked at her. For 5 years, I had feared this woman's absence, and for the last hour, I had feared her malice. But looking at her now, standing in her expensive white dress, clutching her glass of wine like a shield, I didn't see a mastermind. I saw a deeply insecure, hollow shell of a person who could only feel powerful by stealing the lives of others. What are you smiling at? Serena's eyes narrowed, her composure slipping for the first time. I'm smiling because you underestimated me, Serena, I said, stepping past Liam to face her directly. You thought I was the same fragile girl from 5 years ago who fell apart when her boyfriend left. You thought I'd spend the rest of my life running from you. I reached into my clutch. Serena's eyes darted to my hand, her body tensing. Don't even try to threaten me, Autumn. You have nothing. I pulled out my phone. The screen was dark, but as I pressed the side button, it lit up, displaying a running timer. 1 hour, 14 minutes, and 22 seconds. And above the timer, a green bar that read, Livestream public, 4,200 viewers. Serena's face drained of color so fast, she looked like a corpse in the moonlight. What is that? When I was in the restroom, I realized something. I said, my voice calm, almost conversational. You've always been obsessed with control, Serena. You love playing the director. But a director only has power when the audience doesn't know how the tricks are done. I pointed the phone's front-facing camera directly at her. Before I came up here, I started a private live stream on my professional social media account. I sent the link to my firm's managing partners, to your father's business competitors, and to a few investigative journalists I've worked with over the years. Right now, there are over 4,000 people watching us. They heard everything. Liam gasped, looking at the phone, then at me, a spark of hope suddenly igniting in his eyes. They heard you confess to blackmailing Liam. I continued, taking a step toward her. They heard you confess to manipulating donor lists at your father's hospital. They heard you confess to fabricating evidence of corporate espionage to frame me. Every single word, Serena. It's all on the record. It's being recorded by dozens of people as we speak. Shut it off. Serena screamed, her calm facade shattering into a million ugly pieces. She lunged forward, dropping her wine glass. The glass shattered against the concrete, the red wine spilling like blood, echoing the champagne flute from earlier. She grabbed my wrist, trying to tear the phone from my hand. Shut it off, you bitch. Shut it off. But I didn't budge. I held the phone high, out of her reach, while Liam quickly stepped in, grabbing Serena's arms and pulling her back. Let me go. Serena shrieked, struggling against his grip, her perfect hair coming undone, her veil ripping as it caught on the metal railing. You think this changes anything? My father will buy his way out of this. He'll destroy both of you. He can't buy his way out of a public confession of organ trafficking and healthcare fraud, Serena. I said, my voice cold as ice. The board of his company will force him out by tomorrow morning to save their own skin. The police are probably already on their way to this hotel. Right at that moment, a massive boom shook the air. A bright, brilliant flash of emerald green exploded in the night sky directly above us, illuminating the rooftop in a harsh, neon glow. The fireworks had begun. Another explosion followed, a shower of gold and silver sparks that rained down, casting long, dancing shadows across the concrete. Down below, we could hear the faint, muffled cheers of the wedding guests, entirely oblivious to the tragedy unfolding above their heads. In the flashing light of the fireworks, Serena stopped struggling. She looked at Liam, then at me, her eyes wide with a manic, desperate realization. Her empire, built on 5 years of lies and manipulation, was collapsing in a matter of minutes, soundtracked by her own celebratory fireworks. You ruined it, she whispered, her voice cracking as a red flare lit up her tear-streaked face. You ruined my wedding. You ruined my life. No, I said, lowering the phone but keeping the stream running. You ruined your own life the moment you decided people were things you could own. I'm just taking back what's mine. I looked at Liam. He was staring at me, not with the desperation of a victim, but with a profound, quiet awe. Is it really over? He asked, his voice barely audible over the crackle of another firework. It's over, I said. Serena sank to her knees, her beautiful white dress pooling in the spilled red wine and shattered glass. She looked small, pathetic, and entirely defeated. The veil that had looked so elegant now hung limply over her shoulder, like a torn rag. I turned away from her, walking toward the metal stairs. Autumn, wait. Liam called out, taking a step to follow me. I stopped at the top of the stairs, looking back at him. The wind caught my hair, and for the first time in 5 years, my chest didn't feel tight. I could breathe. Are you coming? I asked. Liam looked down at Serena, then back at me. Without a word, he turned his back on the bride, walked away from the shattered glass, and took my hand. As we descended the stairs together, the sky behind us exploded in a brilliant, blinding white light, exposing the darkness for what it was and finally clearing the path ahead.